Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, we talk about ancient Rome a lot on this show, emperors, gladiators, all that. But today, we are really going deep. We're going to unearth a story about an emperor that you probably never, ever heard of.
Oh, that's right. And not only have most people never heard of Macrinus, but this guy was actually the first Roman emperor who wasn't a senator.
Whoa.
Yeah, so just imagine somebody who wasn't born into power, didn't come from the elite, just suddenly finding himself ruling one of the most powerful empires in history.
Wow, that is quite a story. So to understand Macrinus and his rise, I guess we really need to first try to understand the world that he was living in.
Absolutely.
And that world, well, it was pretty crazy. It was during the reign of Caracalla.
Right, so Caracalla was the son of Septimius Severus. He inherited the throne in 211 AD, and his reign was, well, it was kind of all over the place. He did some good things, like extending Roman citizenship to almost everyone who was free in the empire in 212 AD, but then he was also known for being absolutely brutal in suppressing anyone who disagreed with him and, for just tons and tons of military campaigns.
Yeah, we've looked at some sources, and they actually describe him as being almost paranoid, like obsessed with consolidating his power, getting rid of anyone who he thought was a rival. I mean, he even had his own brother, Geta, murdered.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Talk about keeping it in the family.
Well, that act really set the tone for his whole reign. I mean, he was so suspicious of everyone, even the people closest to him, and he just wanted more and more power. So he went on all these military campaigns looking for glory and conquest, but they were really expensive, and they didn't actually achieve much, which of course put a lot of strain on the resources of the empire.
I mean, the guy sounds absolutely nuts. And then there's the trip that he made to Alexandria in 215 AD. That one's almost impossible to believe.
Yeah, so Caracalla went to Alexandria wanting to just show off the power of Rome, but it turned into an absolute bloodbath. He actually ordered a massacre of people in the city after some unrest.
Jeez.
Yeah, and it just really shows how brutal he could be and, how volatile power was in ancient Rome.
So you have this emperor who's a mix of a reformer and a tyrant, right? Fighting wars all the time, crushing anyone who disagrees with him at home. It just seems like a sure recipe for disaster. And that's right where Macrinus comes in. But before we get to his crazy rise to power, let's figure out who this guy even was.
Okay, so Macrinus, he wasn't your typical Roman emperor. He was born in Mauritania, that's in North Africa. And what's really interesting is that he wasn't a senator, which is, the traditional path to becoming emperor.
Oh, wait.
He was an equestrian. That's a member of the Roman knightly class, known for their wealth and service in the administration.
So he wasn't born into the ruling class.
Yes.
That's pretty crazy. How did he manage to work his way up?
Yeah, good question. Well, Macrinus was really smart. He was known for being a great lawyer, super meticulous and detail-oriented, and those skills him noticed. He ended up working in the Roman administration, eventually becoming the Praetorian prefect under Caracalla.
Praetorian prefect, that sounds pretty important.
Mhm.
What exactly did that job involve?
It was a big deal. The Praetorian prefect was basically the emperor's right-hand man responsible for the Praetorian Guard, which was, the elite force that protected the emperor.
So he went from lawyer to top security official.
Uh-huh.
And then in 217 AD, everything changes. Caracalla gets assassinated. And suddenly this equestrian, this guy from North Africa, finds himself right smack dab in the middle of a power vacuum.
Exactly.
So how did Caracalla how did he get assassinated?
Well, no one's really sure. It happened while he was on campaign against the Parthians. He was stabbed in the back while relieving himself by the side of the road. Yeah. Pretty crazy, huh? And historians still debate how much Macrinus was involved. Did he actually plan it? Or was he just lucky to be there?
Yeah, that's a good question. We'll have to look into that one later. But one thing's for sure. After Caracalla died, Macrinus didn't waste any time.
Oh, yeah. He moved fast to take control.
And he was smart about it. He acted like he was really sad about Caracalla's death, and he made sure the Praetorian Guard was on his side. But then he did something really weird. He let Caracalla's mother, Julia Domna, keep her title of Augusta.
I know. That's a strange one.
Why would he do that?
Well, he was playing the game. He needed to get the people who were loyal to the Severans on his side. By being respectful to Julia Domna, who everyone already respected, he tried to, make things look stable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So he basically, he took power and then tried to make it look like everything was normal by aligning himself with the family of the emperor that he replaced.
That's one way to put it.
Seems a little complicated if you ask me.
Oh, yeah, it definitely was. Because, you see, Macrinus might have outsmarted the Roman elite. He might have had the army on his side, but he underestimated someone very important.
Oh, who was that?
The Severan women.
Ah, now
Yeah.
things are getting interesting. The Severan women. So tell me, who were these women, and what made them, what made them so powerful?
Well, the main player here is Julia Maesa. She was Julia Domna's older sister, and let me tell you, this woman was loaded. She had money, connections, and she was really close to the Severan family's power base back in Syria. Oh,
Oh,
and she was ambitious, not just for herself, but for her daughters and her grandsons.
so it wasn't just one woman that Macrinus had to deal with. It was a whole family. And they were all, well, they wanted their power back. So who were these daughters? And who are their sons that got caught up in all of this?
Okay, so Julia Mesa had two daughters. The older one was Julia Soemis, and her son was, he was known as Elagabalus, and the younger daughter was Julia Mamaea. Her son was Alexianus, who would later become the Emperor Severus Alexander.
Wow, those are some names. But it sounds like Elagabalus is the one we should be paying attention to here.
You got it. Elagabalus was actually a priest of the sun god Elagabal in Emesa, and Julia Maesa, well, she saw him as her chance to get her family back in power. She started telling everyone that he was Caracalla's illegitimate son, which probably wasn't true, but it worked on some people in the military.
It's amazing how religion and politics, how they were all mixed up together back in ancient Rome. It seems like claiming some kind of divine connection was it was a pretty good way to get power. Did people really believe that Elagabalus was actually Caracalla's son?
You know, it's hard to say for sure what people believed, but emperors were often seen as, almost like gods. So saying that Elagabalus was descended from a god, well, that gave him a lot of legitimacy. And Julia Maesa, she knew how to spread that story. She had the money and the connections to make people believe it.
So while Macrinus is trying to keep the empire stable, Julia Maesa is back in Emesa working on a plan to get her grandson on the throne. What did Macrinus do about all of this?
At first, I think he just didn't take the Severan women seriously. He let them go back to their estates in Syria. Maybe he thought he could keep them out of politics, but that was a big mistake.
I bet it was. Because Julia Mesa she had a secret weapon, didn't she? The Roman legions that were stationed in Syria.
That's right. She used her family's fortune to get the Third Gallic Legion on her side. They were one of the most powerful legions in the entire Roman army. She told them about Elagabalus' divine lineage, and she promised them rewards. And well, they weren't exactly happy with Macrinus' rule anyway.
And it worked. In 218 AD, the Third Gallic Legion, they revolted. They said they supported Elagabalus, and, well, that started a civil war. And that war, that's what brought Macrinus down.
Yeah, it all happened really fast. Macrinus wasn't ready for a rebellion. He had to scramble to get his forces together and march east to fight them. He even made his son, Diadumenianus, co-emperor. He was hoping that would make him look stronger and get more people to support him.
It's like when things go bad, you bring your family in to show that you're all united. Did it work for Macrinus?
Not really. The Roman army was divided, and the Severan women, especially Julia Maesa and Julia Soemius, they were really good at getting people to support their side.
I can just imagine them standing there in front of all those soldiers, promising them victory and glory if they fought for their young emperor.
Oh, yeah, it was quite a scene. They wore fancy clothes and jewelry, and they gave these big speeches about loyalty and duty. And, of course, they talked about how Elagabalus was chosen by the gods.
Sounds like they were, they were pretty good at propaganda. But in the end, it all came down to who had the stronger army, didn't it? So how did the battle go?
The big battle was near Antioch. That was in June of 218 AD. Macrinus' forces were outnumbered, and they were outmaneuvered. His Praetorian prefect, the guy who was supposed to be protecting him, was killed, and someone delivered his head to Macrinus right in the middle of dinner.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, not a great dinner party.
It sounds like that's when Macrinus knew he was in trouble.
It was the beginning of the end for him. He ran away from the battlefield, tried to get back to Rome. His reign, which had started with so much, ambition and promise, was about to end in disaster.
So now Macrinus, the guy who had come from nowhere to become emperor, he's running for his life. And the Severan dynasty is right behind him. What happened to him? And what about his son, Diadumenianus? He was just a kid, caught in the middle of all of this.
It's a sad story. They both ended up getting killed. Macrinus was captured in Bycynia, and they executed him. And his son, he tried to escape to the Parthian Empire, but he was captured too and killed. The Severan dynasty, after they won, they basically erased Macrinus and his son from Roman history.
It just goes to show that even in the most powerful empires, things can change in an instant. And sometimes the people who are the most ambitious, the
Yeah.
most capable, they get taken down by things they can't control.
Yeah, that's true. Macrinus' story shows us how complicated power can be, how easily ambition can be shattered, and how strong family ties can be, even in a place like ancient Rome, where everything seems so structured and rigid.
Yeah, and those are the kind of questions that, well, they really get historians going. Macrinus's reign was so short, I mean, just 14 months. It
Hmm.
makes it hard to really understand what he did or what he might have done if he had more time. But the historical sources, they do give us some interesting hints.
Like what? Did he try to do any reforms? Put any policies in place that could give us a clue about what he wanted for the empire?
He did actually,
Right.
even with all the chaos going on, he tried to make some changes to how the administration and finances worked. He wanted to streamline the bureaucracy, cut back on spending, and he even tried to reform the currency. So he wasn't just trying to hold on to power. He actually wanted to make the empire better.
It seems that way. It's interesting to think about what he might have achieved if he'd had more time.
Yeah, it really is. But I guess he was just too busy fighting off all those challenges, trying to stay one step ahead of the Severan women.
Exactly. And because of that, even though his background was so interesting and he might have been a good reformer, Macrinus really just ends up being a footnote in Roman history. His reign is seen as just this little blip in the Severan dynasty, a messy period between Caracalla and Elagabalus.
So he did something remarkable. He became the first non-senator to ever be emperor. But then he lost it all because of bad luck and, well, and maybe some bad decisions.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. Macrinus' story reminds us that even the most ambitious and capable people can't always control what happens to them. His rise and fall, they really show how unstable power was and how much everyone was always fighting for control, especially during that time in the Roman Empire.
It makes you wonder how many other people, like Macrinus, are out there,
Yeah.
hidden in Roman history. People who we don't know much about because of how history was written.
That's what makes studying history so fascinating. There's always something new to discover, new ways to look at things, new stories to tell. And that's why we keep doing this show. We're trying to shed some light on those forgotten parts of the past and to make those forgotten people come alive again.
Well, I definitely learned a lot today. I'd never even heard of Macrinus before. But his story, even though it was short and kind of sad, it really gives us a window into ancient Rome. And it helps us understand the people who shaped it.
And hopefully this deep dive has made you want to learn more, to really explore Roman history. There's so many amazing stories out there just waiting to be discovered.
That's the great thing about history, isn't it? There's always more to learn. Always another puzzle to solve. We'll be back next time with another deep dive. We'll be exploring a new part of the past, and we'll bring you the stories the stories that make you think differently, the stories that help you understand the world better. Thanks for listening.